In 1969, Sheikh Abdulazziz Al Badri was tortured and killed at the orders of the Iraqi Vice President Saddam Hussein. Sheikh Al Badri was killed after he labeled the Iraqi government as infidels and called on all Iraqis to overthrow the government. Sheikh Abdulazziz Al Badri resisted many tyrannical regimes and clashed with many dictators during his lifetime. Sheikh Al Badri spoke out against the lack of Islamic unity that existed during his time. He was strongly against nationalism, corruption, and despotism, and called on Arab leaders to extend their support to the Palestinian people, who were being oppressed by Jewish settlers and ignored by Arab rulers. Sheikh Al Badri was born in the year 1929 in Baghdad. After completing his Islamic studies, he became an imam and a preacher. Sheikh Al Badri spoke out against Islamic preachers in Iraq who ignored the social and political issues of the time. Sheikh Al Badri was a charismatic and fearless speaker who was not afraid of any oppressor. In 1949, during the reign of King Faisal II, Sheikh Al Badri was appointed Imam of the Al-Sur Mosque in Baghdad. Sheikh Al Badri used his platform as a preacher to speak out against government corruption and extravagance. As a result, in 1954, he was removed from his position and was exiled to a remote village on the outskirts of Baghdad, where he continued his job as an imam and preacher at a small village mosque. In 1959, the communist dictator known as Abdul Karim Qasim overthrew the monarchy and came to power in Iraq. As a result, Sheikh Al Badri returned to Baghdad. After witnessing the brutality and injustice of the communist government, Sheikh Al Badri began to attack the government in his speeches at the mosque. Abdul Karim Qasim executed thousands of his political opponents. Sheikh Al Badri gave inspiring speeches and organized a huge anti-government demonstration. Sheikh Al Badri managed to gather a crowd of 40,000 protesters who demanded an end to the oppressive communist rule of Abdul Karim Qasim. After government forces began to kill protesters, Sheikh Al Badri issued a fatwa of jihad against the government and called on all people to pick up weapons and fight the government. Therefore, Sheikh Al Badri was banned from public speaking and was placed under house arrest until the year 1960. After being released from house arrest, Sheikh Al Badri left Iraq and traveled to Palestine. Sheikh Al Badri traveled to Palestine to take part in the jihad against the Zionist invaders. Sheikh Al Badri joined forces with the Palestinian resistance leader known as Izzuddin al-Qassam and fought the Israeli occupying forces. Sheikh Al Badri later returned to Iraq and formed an organization dedicated to raising awareness about the Palestinian cause across the Muslim world. Sheikh Al Badri and his organization formed a delegation that visited many Muslim countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and Turkey, in order to educate people about the Palestinian cause and the suffering of the Palestinian people. He called on Muslim leaders to take action against the Israeli occupation of the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank. By the time Sheikh Al Badri had returned to Iraq, the communist government had been overthrown in a revolution. Now Iraq was ruled by the Socialist Ba'ath Party led by President Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr. Sheikh Al Badri initially criticized some of the policies of Hassan al-Bakr, but he was not imprisoned and was tolerated by the new government. However, soon Sheikh Al Badri began to speak out against the nepotism within the new government. In 1968, the president appointed his cousin Saddam Hussein as the vice president of Iraq. Saddam was known for his violent, sadistic nature, as he had previously tortured and killed many political opponents during the revolution. Therefore, Sheikh Al Badri stated that Saddam was not fit to serve as vice president. Saddam also hated ethnic and religious minorities such as Shias and Kurds, and wanted to suppress them through brutal force. Although he was a Sunni, Sheikh Al Badri called for Islamic unity and also met with many Shia scholars in order to organize huge anti-government demonstrations. Sheikh Al Badri called on Sunnis and Shias to unite and overthrow the Socialist Ba'ath Party. Eventually, after hundreds of executions of prominent activists at the hands of Saddam Hussein, Sheikh Al Badri labeled the entire Ba'ath Party as non-Muslims and infidels. Sheikh Al Badri used his military experience that he had gained in Palestine and began planning an armed revolt against the government. In 1969, Sheikh Al Badri was kidnapped, tortured, and killed at the orders of Saddam Hussein, who was the vice president of Iraq at the time. Saddam Hussein brutally tortured Sheikh Al Badri and ordered his tongue to be cut off. Sheikh Al Badri was the most famous Sunni scholar to be killed by Saddam Hussein. Sheikh Abdulazziz Al Badri was martyred on June 26, 1969, after severe torture and brutal abuse at the hands of the Iraqi security services under the rule of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party. He wrote many revolutionary books, including the famous book entitled Al-Islam Bayn al-Ulama wal-Hukkam, which is a book on the importance of Islamic scholars and their role in speaking out against tyrannical rulers. In this book, Sheikh Al Badri refers to the lives of famous classical Islamic scholars such as Abu Hanifa and Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, and how they spoke out against the unjust rulers of their time. Sheikh Al Badri also wrote books criticizing communism and capitalism from an Islamic perspective.